Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing with me, Jonny McFarlane. Today I'm joined by Euan Robertson. Euan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Well, not bad. I've had a bit of a disaster with my phone this morning, but it's not actually working, so that's why we're 8 minutes late. That's what I'm blaming it on, Euan.
Yeah.
But hopefully
Want to blame any company in particular?
hopefully the rest of the day goes a little bit better. So let's get stuck into some Rangers news. First and foremost, a story you broke yesterday, Euan, regarding Calvin Bassey's sell-on. We're going to start there. We've got quite a bit to discuss. Obviously, the Englishman leaving Rangers last year after a superb 6 months in which he really went through an accelerated period of growth as a player, and it culminated with a brilliant performance in the Europa League final, should I say. Now, he is being linked heavily with a move to Brighton, who were also very interested in taking him this time last year. And the fee is being quoted as between 15 and 20 million. Now, some people took that to mean that given Rangers had a 10% sell-on, that would be another 1.5 to 2 million pounds into the Ibrox club's coffers, but that's not the case.
No, and I think we broke the story. We want my head getting any bigger. So, no, yeah, that's the case. There's a lot of comment online, wasn't there? That's why we moved to clear it up. I think that's an important thing to do. It's not about kind of trying to break an exclusive. It's about giving the right information to the supporters. I think that's something that we always try to do. We obviously communicated yesterday. There was a lot of speculation over whether it was a straight sell-on or whether it was a sell-on based on profit, and it was the latter. I think you reported that last summer when the deal happened, and we checked it out with the relevant sources just to kind of get double back in our story to firm it up, and it was the case. So it cleared it up. I think at the time there was some speculation that it was just a straight sell-on on any fee that Ajax paid, but that's very unlikely, very uncommon, in these sort of transfers. It generally is on the profit made in the deal, because the reports at the moment suggest that Ajax are going to sell for a loss. So you got to kind of be realistic about this. They're not going to give Rangers 10% when they're making a loss on the player. I think the expectation from Rangers was that Bassey would kick on at Ajax and then he would move to the Premier League for a big fee. We've seen that before with players from Holland. You look at the summer before with Lisandro Martinez going for big money to Manchester United. There's been loads of other examples over the years, but unfortunately for Rangers, that's not panned out that way. But I think for Calvin, it's an unbelievable move to the English Premier League. It's arguable if it's the best league in the world or not, but it's certainly the most high-profile league in the world with most eyes on it, and I think it's a great move for him.
Yeah, totally agree. Listen, I know talking to sources this time last year at the club, Lisandro Martinez is a great one to bring up, because I think that's how they were viewing the transfer, that Bassey could go there, storm the Eredivisie, perform as well as he has at Rangers, and then potentially make a move to the Premier League, because it was known that there was Premier League interest in Bassey. There's no doubt about that. And there was more interest than just Brighton. There was interest across many clubs. But there is a reluctance, especially at the bigger clubs, Euan, to jump in and pick up a player from Scotland right away. They'd almost rather pay more to see that player take the jump to another league, perform, and then pull the trigger. Now, it's going back a little bit, but you look at Virgil van Dijk, the way he performed for Celtic. There was a lot of Premier League interest in what he was doing, but it was only Southampton that actually managed to snap him up in the end, because there was quite a lot of clubs who weren't really just quite sure about that deal. And we saw in the end, it ended up going to Liverpool, and the rest is history. He's now a European Cup winner. I think that sort of tentative nature towards picking up a player from Scotland in terms of how they might fit into an elite Premier League side still exists.
Yeah.
And there was a sense that Bassey going to Ajax would allow that step to be sort of removed. But I don't think it's that fair, to be honest, to assess Calvin Bassey based on how he's performed in Holland. Now, while the Champions League would suggest that the team he's joined is far better than Rangers, I think if you look and you drill into the detail, Ajax effectively had a bit of a crisis season. You know, they didn't win the league. I don't think they won a cup. And their performance in the Champions League, obviously, although they were able to beat Rangers in both games, they weren't able to qualify for the last 16, and then they went to the Europa League and they didn't really do much there either. So he was in a struggling team, and I think that's contributed to him having a poor season indeed. And Brighton, as you say, is a terrific move for him because they've got such a great track record of developing players, of taking some rough diamonds and smoothing out the edges. And I'm quite sure he'll go there if that deal gets signed off, and he'll smash it. Unfortunately for Rangers, and listen, all we're here to look at is Rangers. I'd be amazed if any of the €5 million add-ons were triggered from last season. You'd imagine that the triggers would be things like Champions League last 16 qualification, Champions League last 8 qualification, Eredivisie title wins, international appearances obviously would be one. Those sort of things, and it doesn't look to me like any of those kind of major milestones would have been triggered. So there may have been smaller aspects of whatever was in the contract triggered, but so that means that the €27 million transfer is now looking at is going to be a €22 million transfer without a 10%. So the €5 million add-on plus the 10% is not going to be activated. But I still think, as Dean Milne is saying there in the comments, I still think that's a cracking deal for Bassey. Yeah. I still think Ajax paid more than he was actually worth in the grand scheme of things. And I just think Rangers got the player sold at the absolute point that they should have sold him. And that's very rare for this club. But it should be commended that they actually did that. So I'm not too concerned about it at all. And I would just say wish Calvin all the best in his endeavours, and I'm sure he'll do well in the Premier League.
So it's a great point, Jonny, about selling players at the right time, because when people talk about transfer windows, the focus always tends to be on players coming in the way. But also, it's so important that clubs capitalise and sell players at the right time as well, especially with a club like Rangers, where the business model's in place for the player trading model. Look at Morelos and Kent, for example. They both could have been sold for, I was going to use maths and say how many figures, but I'll just go for probably around over £10 million at one point, and they both ended up going for free. So I think it was a great deal at the time and a good earner for Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to another transfer that's been rumoured in the press significantly. That of Jonathan Panzo, who's at Nottingham Forest. More reports yesterday, Euan, that one is coming along nicely. Is that your understanding?
I wouldn't go as far as that, Jonny. We obviously spoke about this yesterday. I don't think that it's advancing as quickly as maybe some people are suggesting. I think that the interest is there. There's obviously been dialogue between all the parties, but I don't think there's any agreement at the moment over a fee and stuff like that. So I wouldn't expect this one to be that imminent. It's difficult with transfers, isn't it? Because you always hear little bits of information and sometimes stories that kind of drag on. But ultimately, that can just be the case with transfers. I don't think there's any definitive update on this. There's not been huge acceleration in the deal. However, things do move quickly in the world of transfers. The kind of communication channels between Nottingham Forest and Rangers are obviously good, with Ross Wilson being there. So this is one I think that can move quickly. But at the moment, I don't think there's any kind of agreement in place. I don't think anything's imminent on Jonathan Panzo. And here we go. I bet it'll be at 12 o'clock today we get a picture of him holding the Rangers scarf. But I generally don't think that's the case at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of information flying around at the moment, guys, and the best way to describe it is that there's conflicting information about what's happening from different sources with Jonathan Panzo. So, but I agree with Euan based on what he said. Is the current situation as we can best outline it. But it's one to keep an eye on, because I don't think there's any doubt that Michael Beale does like the player. He's someone he knows, and I would imagine that it's something that Rangers will look to accelerate at some point if they can get an agreement over the line. But I think there's a number of options for Rangers in every position, so we'll see how it pans out. But that one is as far as we're aware, not moving in a direction where it'll happen imminently. Put it that way.
Yeah, this is the thing with transfers. Everybody's got different sources across the place, and everyone's got good sources, and you can't deny that. It's just people hear different things, and it's, I think, what we try to do, Jonny, is try to just give the information the best we can. Speak to as many people as we can who are close to the deal, if that's possible, and then just provide accurate information. Sometimes it's not the information that fans want to hear. Fans want to hear like the players close to joining, and we can understand that. But ultimately, we've got to just try and be as accurate as we can. And what we're hearing on Jonathan Panzo is that nothing is certainly close on that.
Yeah, and I think the fans are going to have a player today to celebrate, put it that way. Anyway, I think Mr. Dessers is going to arrive. As to when, we'll find out, but I'm assuming, given Rangers' proclivity towards announcing things between 4:30 and 5, that you should keep your notifications on Twitter on around that time. So the last one, Euan, that people are talking about a lot is Danilo. We know that that is a player that Rangers are keen on, but I suppose there may be an element of surprise in that, given that Dessers is going to arrive, that Lammers is already signed, that Sima is already signed. You've got Roof, you've got Cholak, you've got Sakala already in the building. So to add Danilo to that mix, you're surely talking about someone else going out the door to make that make sense, because the firepower that gives you is almost it's almost too heavy.
Yeah, again, I think from our point of view, we understand that that's maybe a bit of cold water's been poured in that deal, in terms of it being a priority at the moment. But other places are saying that Rangers are about to lodge a second bid. So again, it's about people have different sources and you hear different information. But if you look at the options up front now, I still think Rangers need one quality option if after Dessers comes in. But I do agree with you, Jonny. I think that will be. I don't say it's dependent on a player going out, but I think a player going out will really speed that deal up. I think if you look at it, there's two options. I know Josh had a piece on the site today about Josh Maja. I think it's Josh Maja and Danilo are the two players that you keep hearing about. I know Rangers do have an interest in both players. That's not any secret. That's not to mean that we're going to bring in both players. It's going to be one or the other. If either of them come to the club, but there's genuine interest from Rangers and Danilo. There's genuine interest from Rangers and Josh Maja. So, but you make a good point. So if you look at it at the moment, I think Dessers will be done in the next 24 hours. That'll be confirmed in the next 24 hours, I believe. So you've got Dessers, Roof, Cholak, Lammers can play there, Sima can play there, Sakala can play there, and even Matondo can play there. He's not going to play anywhere else in the pitch. So you're talking about 7 options at the moment for 2 positions. It is a lot of players. And what you don't want to have a massive squad where players aren't getting game time and can be unhappy. And I think that Beale's spoken about this in the past, that he wants to kind of trim his squad this summer. So I think now you'll see the focus turning to players going out the way. It's a good point about Roof, because I think everyone's been watching the training videos with eager eyes, but I'm not sure I've seen Kemar Roof in the training videos. Could be wrong on that. If I am, do let me know. I think the other one was people talked about Ben Davies maybe not being in the training videos. I thought I seen him in one yesterday, but again, I could be wrong. But ultimately, we're going to training today, and we'll get to watch 50 minutes of training, so we should be able to provide an update to everyone on that.
Yeah, Daniel through here saying fingers crossed we get Danilo to sell Roof. I think you're struggling to sell Kemar Roofe, to be honest, Daniel. I think if you look at his injury records last season, I don't think there'll be too many Championship clubs, Premier League clubs, League One clubs down south that will be keen to take a gamble on Kemar Roofe, given where he's at in terms of his fitness. I think if you can get someone to come in and take his significant wages off the wage bill, it's one to consider. But I'm not sure that's how it's going to pan out. I think it's more likely Kemar Roofe remains and hopefully as part of the team going forward. And then at the end of the season, you can assess how many games he's played and how successful he's been. I think obviously, like all of us, Michael Beale rates Kemar Roofe. It's just whether or not he's actually able to put it all together and get out on the pitch. If he is, then there's no questions about him. But you've obviously got to look at this last season, which has been horrendous for Roofe from an injury point of view, and even probably he was in and out with injury in the last 6 months of last season. And the season before, people talk about Alfredo Morelos being fit for that Europa League final. If Kemar Roofe had been fit, I think Rangers would have won. I think you saw the difference that he made when he came on in the final. It was stark. So yeah, he's been a huge player, but not being available for the big games to play 90 minutes has been an issue. There's no doubt about that. Aldo is saying that Čolak is going nowhere. Aldo, I like your confidence, but I don't share it. I think Čolak is away. He's not obviously gone yet, but the guy's changed agents. I mean, do the math. I think you see the amount of strikers that Rangers are linked with. Ask yourself, does Antonio Čolak really look like a Michael Beale sort of player? Look at the sort of players he's bringing in. He's talking about players that need to be involved in every phase of the game. And I think that's the silver bullet for my point. That's the key element of why Antonio Čolak is probably not going to be Michael Beale's cup of tea, because he isn't. He's a player that's involved in the box, a fox in the box, and great finisher and valuable probably to have around. But is he going to want to be third, fourth, fifth choice striker? I seriously doubt it. He's an international striker who's scored goals wherever he's been. And I think there's no doubt that he'll be able to go and get a club in one of those leagues where he's been a success. You look to Greece, he obviously didn't perform well there, but in the Danish league, it was a Swedish league, wasn't it? He played, and obviously back in Croatia, he's performed the Scottish Premiership. So I don't think there's any doubt in his ability to find the back of the net if you can put him in a team that plays to his strengths.
Just on Čolak, it's such an interesting one because he is a goal scorer, isn't he? That if you're describing Antonio Čolak, he's a goal scorer. The kids probably call him a bags man. That's what they call him. But it's interesting because I hear a lot of people say this argument. I think it's a very valid one. If you're playing maybe the lesser sides in the league, Čolak would guarantee you goals. But I think the hope for Rangers this summer is that the other players can also guarantee goals and maybe provide a little bit more elsewhere. It seems like I wrote a piece about it earlier on in the summer, and I said that I think Čolak will find a new club this summer based on the facts you've just laid out. And then at the same time, you think, well, is that a little bit harsh on him, just given his goal-scoring record last season? And it was that performance, it was at Hibs away. I think he got a double. He put up front with Sakala. And he was really good. He had a really good game, and he did show signs that he could maybe do some of the things that the Beale wants from his number 9. But I just think with game time being limited, that he's one where if a bid comes in, that he will move in the summer. But you don't know. Like you genuinely don't know. Michael Beale spoke really highly about him towards the end of last season. How much read into that, I don't know. I think Čolak came out and says, "I will be the number 9 next season," which is the confidence you want from a striker. But how realistic is that? Because I think Dessers is going to be the main man up top, and then you've got the likes of Sima if another player comes in. So I don't know. Čolak, my intuition would be that he would depart in this window.
Yeah, just a quick word on our sponsors, Euan, because I didn't do that at the start because I was flustered. This is why Derek hosts these things as a general rule. Obviously, Seneca Hair Restoration. If you're looking to get some work done up on top, this is the place for you. It's done by doctors. There's been international rugby players, footballers who have been involved and got this done and really helped their confidence. So if it's something you're thinking about, there is no one better. They are the best in the business. Give them a wee shout via their website to discuss it further. They will give you a full going over and have a look at your options there. So thank you to Seneca, our sponsors. Listen, we'll go on to another wee comment, which I think is quite important. One that I think is worth chewing over. And actually, I think there's positive and negatives to it. So first point from Barry Anderson, get Matondo, Kamara and Wright to Saudi. Right, now, a wee laughing emoji. Not as silly as it sounds. But here's the negative element to it. Yes, there's now a new market, and yes, I think Rangers players that Rangers are looking to ship on might fit into the structure of the style of the player that certain clubs might be looking at to pad out their squads. But there's also this element to it, which is what happens if Steven Gerrard comes in for players that Rangers don't want to let go. What happens if Steven Gerrard comes in for a Connor Goldson or a James Tavernier, and you're talking about incredibly important players getting pulled out ahead of huge Champions League games and a start to the season that is absolutely massive. I would actually say, especially Goldson, is essentially untouchable at the moment for Rangers because the defensive situation around them is slightly chaotic. They need to sign other players. If you take him out of it, then all of a sudden, I think that whole defensive unit is looking quite shaky and needs a bit of time to bed in, and I don't like the look of it. Tavernier is obviously a little bit different, but again, you look at the amount of goals and assists that James Tavernier gets, you really want to give that up, especially from right back. So, listen, I'm not saying that Gerrard's going to come in for these players. I'm pulling this out of my backside. I'm just looking at it from the point of view of, do managers go for players they know? Yes. Do managers go for players they know they can get? Yes. Do you think that James Tavernier or Connor Goldson couldn't have their head turned by 150 grand a week or a 200 grand a week financial offer? Well, they wouldn't be human if they weren't turned, their heads weren't turned by that. So it's just an interesting wee one. You know, Gerrard has got a propensity to go for players he's worked with in the past. We've seen that at Rangers. We've seen it at Aston Villa when he went and got Philip Coutinho. So while I don't think anybody at Rangers would be the first choice for Steven Gerrard to go and get, because clearly he's going to be shopping in a richer pool than that, that's not to say that it won't happen. So I kind of saw the news of Gerrard going there to Saudi and felt a little bit of a chill from a Rangers point of view, as well as thinking, oh, well, you never know, he could come back for some of these players like a Glenn Kamara, for example, who he knows and respects.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very surprised if Scott Wright was at the top of Steven Gerrard's shopping list, given the money at his disposal. But the way you framed that, Jonny, makes it quite fascinating, isn't it? Because it might be a little bit of a worry that he could come back for a player he knows and trusts. It's well known that Connor Goldson and Gerrard were extremely close during their time at Rangers, and it could be a factor of maybe Gerrard trying to do one of his I wouldn't say friends, but someone who used to work with a favour and giving them this big payday. You look at it that way as well, and there's maybe another interesting dynamic in whether he come and take a Rangers player, which we won't go into on the video today. But I mean, you look at someone like Glenn Kamara. I think that's the one that you'd look at and think, there could be something in that, because Gerrard was a massive fan of Kamara. I think they built an extremely close bond after like all the terrible stuff that Glenn experienced against in the Czech Republic with the racism. So there's also a close bond there. But I don't agree with Blue Nose John there. I think Connor Goldson's arguably Rangers' most important player, or one of them at the moment. And I'm not saying he's our best player, because you've got the likes of Cantwell and Raskin, who came in and done exceptionally well last season. You've got Tavernier, who's putting up big numbers. But I think if you take any player out that team, the biggest absence would be felt with Goldson coming out. I don't think there's a direct replacement at his level. I think he's the one that I'd say is arguably Rangers' most important player. That's quite a good point by Dean there, saying about, and we're just speculating here. We're not. There's literally nothing that we're hearing in this. We're just speculating into it. But he's saying that it'd be a good deal to sell Goldson. I'm not so sure. You look at, I think Kamara's the one you'd look at and think, well, you know, there's no secret that Kamara can move on this summer. Could Gerrard come in for him? Possibly. It'd be good because the money that comes in from Saudi Arabia is absolutely wild. We've seen that, you know, obviously in this window, but I'm not sure. It's impossible to say, isn't it? At the moment.
The thing is for me, Euan, is the money that they're banding around is a total game changer. Like, look at Jota, right? The transfer fee isn't, you know, a game changer. 25 million. It's just what they got with, and that's if it's even that. You know, it was 25 million euros. It's become 25 million pounds. I notice. But the point is that's just the same as what they got for Kieran Tierney, what Celtic got there. So it's not taking the transfer fee onto another level. But what is another level is giving a player like Jota £190,000 per week. Now that's tax free, so it's the equivalent of £380,000 a week in the UK. Now, with all due respect to Jota, who I think we all know is a good player, if we're being honest, that sort of money was not achievable for him in his career. He wasn't at that level. That money was a mile away from being achievable. Even 100 grand a week would have been probably a stretch for Jota. So to go to that kind of level of money is just, it's frankly insane. No one could turn that down, Euan. No Rangers player would turn it down. I certainly wouldn't turn it down. Would you turn it down?
Well, as much as I'm enjoying working with you, Jonny, if my Saudi media outlet comes in, I'm away.
Yeah, I think I would take that weekly wage as a yearly salary quite happily. Got Gage coming in here with a question around the transfer. Any news on Aaron Trusty? Gage, on that one, Rangers were interested in the player, but from what I understand, having spoken to sources down south, the level of finance that Arsenal were looking for that player was significant, too much, and the level of wages would also have been difficult, but not unachievable. But that certainly the transfer element to it, I think, means that Rangers have now moved on to other targets. Right, Euan, listen, let's call this a day. We're going to come back on later on because there is a live event at Murray. Well, I was going to say Murray Park. That's awful. The Rangers Training Centre. I still have that habit which I need to knock out myself. With four players we're going to speak to, which is going to be fantastic. And we are going to be looking forward to that. And you will come live on a video with me after that to discuss what was said, what we can talk about anyway. What's not embargoed for later in the week. So listen, let's call it a day here, and we'll come back later on and discuss that. But thanks for everyone who's coming in. Thanks for all your comments. Yes, we will be live later, Dean. We will be coming to you from the Rangers Training Centre. I don't know, roughly maybe 1:30ish, somewhere around that time. But keep your notifications on. Obviously, if you subscribe and have notifications, it'll pop up on your phone or your computer, or your device. But we'll be back at that time, and we'll have I'm quite sure quite a lot to discuss from that. Guys, also just to remind you, we've now got this members scheme. There's a number of real good benefits to it. Number one, you can get all our videos ad-free, which we post up. So I know there's a lot of people who complain about the ads on our videos. You don't get them if you're watching live, but if you're watching them playback, well, this is a way to avoid that. You will get priority in terms of the comments. We've read out more comments from our members than we have from non-members. You get also 3 to 5 extra videos a week. We had one yesterday that Derek put up about SEMA, which has already been well received. and we'll have another couple before the end of the week. So there's obviously plenty there to get your teeth into. It's $2.99 a month extra, and we appreciate your support. If you could go and do that, it would be vastly appreciated and help us continue to grow and help reshape our coverage as time goes on. So yeah, you just hit the members button in our homepage, and you will be able to fill that out, the details, and join up. Right, guys, we are going to call it a day there. Thank you for watching. Until next time,